The chamber of the Galactic Council stretched wide enough to hold 10,000 beings. Ambassador Marcus Chen stood at the speaking platform, his hands gripping the metal railing. Around him, representatives from 850 different species watched from their floating seats. Some had tentacles, some had wings, some were clouds of gas inside protective suits. But all of them were looking at Chen with the same expression, boredom mixed with contempt. Chen took a deep breath. He had practiced this speech for 3 weeks. He had rewritten it 17 times. Every word mattered because if the council rejected his plea, everything would change. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Chen began, his voice amplified across the massive chamber. I stand before you today with an urgent request. The Zoltharian Empire has attacked 4 colony worlds in the past 2 months. 30,000 human civilians are dead. 200,000 aliens from other species have also perished. We ask the Council to authorize full military deployment of Earth's defensive forces. A rippling sound moved through the chamber. It was laughter. Thousands of aliens were laughing at him. Praetor Velcane, the Council's current leader, rose from his seat. The tall, blue-skinned Arconian looked down at Chen with 4 golden eyes. His expression showed amusement. Ambassador Chen, humanity has been part of our community for 150 years. In that time, you have contributed little to our collective defense. Your species maintains exactly 200 peacekeeping vessels. The Zoltharian Empire commands over 50,000 warships. What exactly do you believe your full military deployment would accomplish? Chen felt his jaw tighten. Praetor, with respect, those 200 ships are not our full military capacity. They are merely what you can afford, Velcane interrupted. We understand, Ambassador. Humanity is a young species. You lack the industrial base, the technology, and frankly the experience for serious military operations. This is not an insult. It is simply reality. More laughter echoed through the chamber. Chen saw the Zoltharian representative, a massive reptilian called Warlord Kresh, grinning with rows of sharp teeth. The Zoltharians had spent decades testing the galaxy's borders. They attacked weak species, absorbed their worlds, and grew stronger. The Council always responded with sanctions and sternly worded demands. Nothing more, Praetor, Chen said, his voice harder now. You misunderstand. We are not asking for permission because we lack capability. We are asking because we want to follow proper protocols. Earth has maintained strict limitations on our military presence in galactic space. These limitations were self-imposed. We can remove them, but we wanted Council approval first. A small furry delegate from the Pelthian system chittered into her translator. Self-imposed limitations? How quaint. The humans think they are being polite by pretending to be strong. More laughter. Chen felt heat rising in his chest. He looked back at the observation booth where Admiral Sarah Kovac sat. She was a tall woman with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much combat. Even from this distance, Chen could see her shaking her head slowly. She had warned him this would happen. Chen turned back to the Council. I need you to understand something. 150 years ago, when we made first contact with the Vrixian exploration fleet, there was an incident. Our forces accidentally revealed certain capabilities that frightened your predecessors. To ease tensions and facilitate peaceful integration, Earth's Parliament voted to implement what we call the soft contact protocols. Yes, Velcane said dismissively. We have all read the historical records. Your primitive weapons startled some explorers who were not expecting hostility. You have since learned to behave in a civilized manner. We are pleased with your progress. Chen's hands gripped the railing so hard his knuckles turned white. That is not what happened. The Vrixian fleet encountered a single human patrol ship near Mars. When they attempted to scan our homeworld without permission, the patrol ship disabled 17 of their vessels in under 2 minutes. Not destroyed, disabled. We went out of our way to ensure no casualties, but your predecessors saw those 17 ships floating dead in space and they were terrified. The laughter stopped. Velcane's eyes narrowed. The records state that primitive human weapons damaged outdated exploration vessels. Nothing more. The records were edited, Chen said quietly, by mutual agreement. Your predecessors did not want the other species to panic. We did not want to be feared. So we agreed to limit our presence. We agreed to show only the gentlest face of humanity. We built exactly 200 peacekeeping ships using technology 50 years behind our actual capabilities. We stationed them in obvious locations. We made sure everyone knew about them, and we kept the rest hidden. The chamber was silent now. 850 species stared at the human ambassador. For 150 years, Chen continued, Earth has honored this agreement. We have shown you only what we thought you could handle. We have been patient.
We have been peaceful.
But the Zoltharians are killing our people. They are killing your people. And you refuse to act. Warlord Kresh stood up, his massive frame dominating his section of the chamber. The human squeaks like a frightened rodent. My fleets have nothing to fear from your toy ships. Chen turned to face the Zoltharian. I am not asking you to fear us, Warlord. I am begging you to let us handle this quietly. If you continue your attacks, if the Council continues to do nothing, Earth will be forced to revoke the soft contact protocols. And once we do that, we cannot go back. Threats, Velkane said coldly, from a species that contributes almost nothing to galactic defense. This Council has heard enough. Please, Chen said, and he hated how desperate his voice sounded. You do not understand what you are asking for. Humanity spent 10,000 years fighting ourselves. We had wars that killed hundreds of millions. We built weapons that could crack planets. We created machines that hunted and killed with no mercy. We learned, through blood and fire and nightmare, exactly what we are capable of. And we chose to put those things away. We chose peace. We chose restraint. But if you force our hand, enough! Velkane's voice boomed through the chamber. This Council does not respond to fear-mongering. The Zoltharian situation will be resolved through proper diplomatic channels. Humanity's peacekeeping forces are sufficient for their current role. Your request for expanded military deployment is denied. Chen stood frozen at the platform. He had failed. He had known he would probably fail, but some part of him had hoped. Some foolish part of him had believed the Council might listen. However, Velkane continued, in light of recent losses, this Council extends its sympathies to the human victims and their families. We also remind all member species that attacks on civilian populations violate Council law. Warlord Kresh, your empire is officially censured for these actions. Kresh laughed. It was a deep rumbling sound that echoed through the chamber. Censured. I am terrified. The Council session ended. Delegates began floating toward the exits, already chattering about other business. To them, this had been a minor distraction. Chen remained at the platform watching them leave. Admiral Kovac appeared beside him. She had descended from the observation booth. You tried, she said softly. I failed, Chen replied. You gave them a chance. That is more than they deserved. Kovac looked at the departing delegates with cold eyes. How long before the next attack? Intelligence says the Zoltharians are mobilizing a major fleet near the Kepler colonies. They have 60,000 civilians, mostly human farmers and their families. Maybe 3 days before the attack comes. Kovac nodded slowly. Then we have 3 days to get Parliament's authorization. They will vote to revoke the protocols, Chen said. It was not a question. Yes, they will vote today. The motion has already been prepared. After what happened at New Sarajevo, after watching those 30,000 people die while the Council did nothing, Parliament is finished with restraint. Chen felt suddenly tired. He was 63 years old. He had spent 40 years in diplomatic service. He had believed in the Galactic Council. He had believed in peaceful coexistence. But looking around this chamber, seeing the empty seats where delegates had sat laughing at Earth's pain, he felt something break inside him. How many ships do we actually have? He asked. Kovac smiled, but there was no humor in it. 50,000 combat vessels. Another 30,000 support craft. 20 million soldiers in active service, 400 million reserves, weapons platforms scattered across 600 systems, and enough firepower to sterilize every Zoltharian world in under a week. Chen closed his eyes. They have no idea, do they? None. They think we are weak because we choose to appear weak. They think peacekeepers are all we have because peacekeepers are all we have shown them. Kovac paused. We should have told them the truth from the beginning. Would they have believed us? Would they have let us join their community if they knew what we really are? Probably not. But at least we would not have to feel guilty about what comes next. 3 days later, the Zoltharian fleet entered the Kepler system. Warlord Kresh commanded the attack personally. He brought 300 warships, more than enough to overwhelm the 2 aging peacekeeping vessels stationed there. But when his fleet arrived, they found themselves facing something else entirely. The UNSC Retribution hung in orbit above Kepler Prime. It was massive, nearly 3 kilometers long. Every surface bristled with weapons. The The Zoltharians had never seen anything like it. "What is that?" Kresh demanded. His tactical officer checked the readings twice. "According to our database, it is registered as Deep Space Mining Station 47. But Lord, those are not mining lasers. Those are..." The Retribution opened fire. What happened next took 4 minutes and 17 seconds. When it was over, 300 Zoltharian warships had been reduced to floating debris. Kresh's own flagship was the only vessel left intact, held in place by tractor beams it could not break. Admiral Kovacs appeared on every view screen in the dying ship. She looked at Kresh with cold, dead eyes. "Warlord Kresh, I am Admiral Sarah Kovacs of the United Nations Space Command. Earth has revoked the soft contact protocols. You wanted to see what humanity is really capable of. You are about to learn." Kresh stared at her in shock. "This is impossible. You had only 200 ships. You are weak. You are..." "We were holding back," Kovacs said simply. "You would not listen when we warned you." Ambassador Chen begged the council to let us resolve this quietly. "You laughed at him. You laughed at us. So now you get to see what happens when humanity stops being polite." She cut the transmission. Kresh's flagship was released and allowed to limp away. Kovacs wanted survivors. She wanted them to tell the story. She wanted the galaxy to know what was coming. On Concordia Prime, in the halls of the Galactic Council, Praetor Velkane received the report. He watched the footage 3 times. He saw 300 warships destroyed in less than 5 minutes. He saw the Retribution hanging in space like a monument to humanity's hidden power, and for the first time in his long career, Praetor Velkane felt afraid. The emergency session of Earth's Parliament took place in Geneva, inside a building that had stood for 300 years. 2,000 representatives sat in curved rows, each one representing a region of Earth or one of the colony worlds. The chamber was silent as Prime Minister Elena Rostova stood at the podium. "The motion before us is simple," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was proposing. "We vote to formally revoke the soft contact protocols established in the year 2197. If this motion passes, humanity will no longer hide its true military capabilities from the Galactic Council. We will respond to the Zoltharian threat with our full strength." Representative Jackson from the North American Union stood up. He was an old man, nearly 90, and he had been in Parliament during the last major war scare. "Prime Minister, I remember when these protocols were established. Our grandparents agreed to them because they feared the galaxy would turn against us if they knew the truth. Has that risk disappeared?" "No," Rostova admitted. "If anything, the risk is greater now. We have integrated into galactic society. We have trade partners, cultural exchanges, and millions of humans living on mixed-species worlds. If we reveal ourselves, there will be panic. Some species may turn hostile, but Representative Jackson, 30,000 of our people are dead. The Council refuses to act. The Zoltharians are mobilizing for another attack. What choice do we have?" A Martian representative named Yuki Tanaka raised her hand. "Can we not simply defend ourselves without making a grand announcement? Must we reveal everything?" Admiral Kovacs, standing beside the Prime Minister, answered that question. "Once we engage the Zoltharians with our real military, there will be no hiding it. Fleet movements will be detected. Weapon signatures will be analyzed. Within days, every species in the galaxy will know that humanity has been concealing our capabilities for a century and a half. The only question is whether we control the narrative or let others define it for us." The debate continued for 3 hours. Some representatives argued for restraint. Others demanded immediate action. A few suggested a middle path, revealing some capabilities while keeping others hidden. But everyone knew the truth. Once the door opened, it could not be closed again. Finally, the vote was called. The chamber fell silent as each representative registered their decision. The results appeared on the massive display screen, 1847 in favor of revoking the protocols. 153 against. Prime Minister Rostova looked at the numbers for a long moment. Then she pressed the confirmation button. The motion passes. As of this moment, the soft contact protocols are revoked. Admiral Kovacs, you have full authorization to deploy our forces as you see fit. Kovacs saluted. Thank you, Madame Prime Minister. I will not waste this opportunity. Within hours, orders went out across human space. Ships that had been hidden for decades began moving into position. Weapons platforms came online. Soldiers received mobilization notices. The machinery of war, carefully maintained but never truly used, started turning. In orbit around Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, something that looked like an ice mining station began to change. Panels slid away, revealing missile batteries. The civilian station crew, who had spent years maintaining the cover story, finally dropped the pretense. They were naval officers, and this was the UNSC Vengeance, a heavy cruiser designed to look like industrial infrastructure. Similar transformations happened across 600 star systems. Mining stations became warships. Merchant vessels revealed hidden weapons. Scientific research stations turned out to be forward military bases. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had hidden an entire military force in plain sight. On Earth, in a secure bunker beneath the Pacific Ocean, a room full of military planners worked around the clock. Colonel James Morrison stared at the holographic display showing Zoltharian territory. 47 military installations, 8 major shipyards, a dozen fortress worlds, all of it mapped down to the last detail by human intelligence assets the Zoltharians never suspected existed. "Can we really hit all of them simultaneously?" asked Major Chen Liu, the colonel's second in command. "We have the assets," Morrison replied. "The question is whether we should. A simultaneous strike across 47 systems would require revealing almost our entire force structure. There would be no more secrets left to keep. Admiral Kovacs wants them to know. She wants the Zoltharians and everyone else to understand what happens when you push humanity too far." Morrison nodded slowly. "Then we give them a demonstration they will never forget. Begin Operation Reckoning. Coordinate with Fleet Command. Every strike group launches in 72 hours. The news of what happened at Kepler had already spread across the galaxy. Survivors from Kresh's fleet told stories that sounded impossible. A single human ship destroying 300 warships in minutes. Weapons that fired faster than tracking systems could follow. Shields that absorbed firepower that should have vaporized any vessel. In the Galactic Council, an emergency session convened. Velcane stood before the assembled delegates, and for once he did not look confident. "We have received confirmation from multiple sources. The vessel that destroyed the Zoltharian fleet was registered in our database as a civilian mining station. This suggests that humanity has been deliberately misrepresenting their capabilities." The Pelthian delegate, who had laughed at Ambassador Chen just days before, spoke in a quiet voice. "How many other mining stations might actually be warships?" "We do not know," Velcane admitted. "We are reviewing all registered human assets, but the data is extensive. Humanity has thousands of stations, outposts, and vessels scattered across council space." Warlord Kresh stood up, his body language aggressive despite the defeat his forces had suffered. "This is an outrage. The humans have violated council law by concealing military assets. They must be censured. Their vessels must be impounded until a full investigation." "Sit down, Warlord," Velcane said coldly. "Your empire just attempted genocide against a council member species. You lost 300 ships in the process. I suggest you focus on your own problems." Kresh sat, but his eyes burned with rage. The council debated for hours, but no consensus emerged. Some species wanted to punish humanity for the deception. Others argued that humans had technically violated no laws, since they had never lied about their capabilities, simply failed to volunteer information. A few representatives quietly suggested that perhaps the Zoltharians had gotten what they deserved. Ambassador Chen sat in his quarters, watching the council feed on his personal screen. He had submitted his resignation that morning. After 40 years of service, he was done. He had tried to do things the right way, the diplomatic way, and it had failed. A message came through on his secure line. It was Admiral Kovacs. "Ambassador, I wanted you to know before the public announcement. Operation Reckoning begins in 60 hours. We are going to hit every major Zoltharian military installation simultaneously. It will be the largest human military operation in history." Chen felt his stomach tighten. "How many ships are you deploying?" 30,000 combat vessels. Another 15,000 in support roles. We are also activating certain weapon systems that have been in storage since the soft contact protocols began." "What kind of weapon systems?" Kovacs hesitated. "The kind we swore we would never use again. But Admiral Chen, they killed 30,000 of our people. They laughed at us when we begged for peace. I am not going to let them think humanity is weak." "When did I become Admiral Chen?" he asked quietly. "Your resignation was rejected." Earth needs experienced voices right now, even if you choose to retire after this is over. The president is offering you a position as senior advisor to the military command. No politics, no diplomacy, just making sure we do not go too far. Chen laughed bitterly. You want me to be humanity's conscience? I think we left our conscience behind when we let those protocols lapse. Someone needs to remember why we implemented them in the first place. Will you accept? Chen closed his eyes. He thought about the 30,000 dead. He thought about the council laughing at his warnings. He thought about his daughter, who lived on one of the colony worlds, and how close she had come to being one of the casualties. I accept, he said. But Admiral, I need you to promise me something. When this is over, when the Zoltharians are defeated, we put the restraints back on. We do not become the monsters we are capable of being. I promise, Kovac said. But first we have to make sure everyone understands why those restraints exist. 72 hours after the vote, Operation Reckoning began. Across Zoltharian space, human strike groups appeared simultaneously. They emerged from faster-than-light travel with perfect coordination, arriving at exactly the same moment across dozens of star systems. The Zoltharians had never seen such precise fleet movements. At the Kreshnar shipyards, the largest military production facility in the Empire, 6 human battleships appeared in orbit. The station's defensive fleet numbered 50 vessels. They launched immediately, confident in their numerical advantage. The human ships opened fire. Their weapons did not use conventional energy beams. Instead, they fired solid projectiles, massive slugs of metal accelerated to a fraction of light speed. When these projectiles hit Zoltharian shields, they punched through like paper. When they hit hulls, they tore ships apart. The battle lasted 9 minutes. All 50 Zoltharian vessels were destroyed. The shipyards, which could have been defended indefinitely behind their shields, watched helplessly as human boarding teams teleported directly through the defensive barriers. Within an hour, human soldiers controlled the entire facility. Similar scenes played out across Zoltharian territory. Fortress worlds that were supposed to be impregnable found their shields failing as human cyber warfare teams hacked through systems the Zoltharians thought were secure. Military bases were bombarded from orbit by weapons that struck like the hammer of an angry god. Zoltharian fleets, trying to respond to multiple crises at once, found themselves outmaneuvered by human ships that seemed to predict their every move. In the Imperial Palace on the Zoltharian homeworld, Emperor Thraxus watched the reports with growing horror. In a single day, humanity had crippled his empire's military infrastructure. 47 installations destroyed or captured, 8 shipyards in human hands, thousands of warships reduced to debris. His military advisor, General Vex, stood beside the Emperor's throne. Your Majesty, we must request a ceasefire. The humans are not fighting like any enemy we have faced before. They do not engage in honorable combat. They strike from nowhere, destroy everything, and disappear before we can respond. We still have the home fleet, Thraxus said. 20,000 ships protect this world. The humans cannot. An aide burst into the throne room. Your Majesty, human forces have been detected at the system's edge. They are broadcasting a message. Show me, Thraxus commanded. The main display activated. Admiral Sarah Kovac appeared standing on the bridge of her flagship. Behind her, through the viewports, hundreds of human warships were visible. Emperor Thraxus, Kovac said, her voice formal and cold. I am Admiral Sarah Kovac of the United Nations Space Command. 3 weeks ago, your forces attacked New Sarajevo Colony. You killed 30,000 human civilians, including children. You did this because you believed we were weak. You believed we would not fight back. Today, I am here to correct that misconception. Thraxus felt his blood run cold. How did you get past our perimeter defenses? Kovac smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Emperor, we have been mapping your defenses for 50 years. We have agents inside your military. We have compromised your communication networks. We know everything about your empire, because we have been watching you since the day you took the throne. We knew you would attack us eventually. We were prepared. What do you want? Thraxus asked. Unconditional surrender. Immediate withdrawal from all occupied territories. War crimes trials for everyone involved in ordering attacks on civilian populations. And reparations for every human life your empire has taken. Kovac leaned forward. You have 6 hours to respond. If you refuse, we will demonstrate what humanity is truly capable of. And Emperor, I promise you do not want that demonstration. The transmission ended. Thraxus looked at General Vex. Can we win? Vex hesitated. Your Majesty, in 3 weeks the humans have destroyed half our military infrastructure. They have done this while suffering minimal casualties. Our intelligence estimates they have deployed less than half their total forces. If these estimates are accurate and they continue attacking at this pace, the Empire will collapse within months. We are Zoltharians, Thraxus roared. We do not surrender. But even as he said the words, he knew they were false. The Zoltharian Empire had built its power by attacking weaker species. They had never faced an enemy that could fight back like this. The 6-hour deadline passed without a response from Emperor Thraxus. Admiral Kovac had expected this. Pride was a powerful thing, and the Zoltharians had built their entire culture around the idea that they were superior warriors. They could not comprehend surrender, so humanity provided the demonstration Kovac had promised. The UNSC Absolute Zero, a vessel that had never appeared in any galactic database, entered the Zoltharian home system. It was smaller than a standard battleship, shaped like a dagger, and it moved with unnatural speed. The home fleet, 20,000 strong, moved to intercept. Colonel Anna Petrov commanded the Absolute Zero. She had served in the Deep Black, the secret military programs that even most humans did not know existed. Her crew numbered only 50, but every one of them was a specialist in their field. All ships, this is Colonel Petrov, she broadcast on an open channel that every Zoltharian vessel could hear. What you are about to witness is called a Reckoning-class weapons test. Emperor Thraxus refused to surrender. He chose this demonstration. Remember that when you tell the story. The Absolute Zero stopped moving. It hung in space alone, facing 20,000 enemy warships. Petrov entered a series of commands. Deploy the Ravagers. From the Absolute Zero's hull, 1,000 small objects launched. They were each about the size of a basketball, smooth and black without any visible engines or weapons. They drifted away from the ship, spreading out into a cloud. The Zoltharian fleet opened fire. Energy beams and missiles filled the space around the Absolute Zero. Shields absorbed the first wave, then the second. But even the best shields could not hold forever against 20,000 ships. It did not matter. The Ravagers activated. Each sphere split open, revealing internal mechanisms that hurt to look at directly. They began moving, accelerating faster than any ship could track. Within seconds, they reached the nearest Zoltharian vessels. What happened next was difficult to watch. The Ravagers did not explode. They did not fire weapons. Instead, they attached themselves to Zoltharian hulls and began disassembling the ships at a molecular level. Metal, ceramic, composite materials. Everything was broken down into base components. The Ravagers consumed matter and used it to build more Ravagers. The process was exponential. 1 Ravager became 2. 2 became 4. 4 became 8. Within 3 minutes, the first Zoltharian battleship had been completely disassembled. The cloud of Ravagers, now numbering in the millions, moved to the next target. Admiral Kresh, commanding the home fleet from his flagship, watched in horror. Fire everything. Destroy those machines! But conventional weapons were useless. The Ravagers were too small, too fast, and too numerous. Every Zoltharian ship they touched was reduced to its component atoms within minutes. The crew never even had time to evacuate. All ships, retreat, Kresh ordered. Fall back to the planet, too late. The Ravagers had already spread throughout the fleet. Ships trying to escape found their engines failing as the machines consumed critical systems. Emergency pods launched and the Ravagers let them go. This weapon was designed to destroy ships, not kill people. That somehow made it more terrifying. In 4 hours, the entire home fleet ceased to exist. 20,000 warships became nothing but floating clouds of separated molecules. The Ravagers, their task complete, shut down and drifted harmlessly in space. They were designed with a kill switch that activated once they ran out of targets. Humanity had learned from old mistakes about creating self-replicating weapons. Colonel Petrov broadcast again. Emperor Thraxis, you now understand what humanity is capable of. We could deploy Ravagers across every Zoltharian world. We could reduce your entire civilization to atoms within a week. We choose not to do this because we are not monsters. But make no mistake, we could. Will you surrender now? On the surface of the Zoltharian homeworld, Emperor Thraxis sat on his throne and wept. General Vex stood beside him, his own eyes wide with shock. Your Majesty, we have no choice. The humans have weapons we cannot fight. If we continue, they will destroy us all. We were supposed to be the conquerors, Thraxis said quietly. We were supposed to be strong. Strength means knowing when to surrender, Vex replied. Your Majesty, our people are still alive. Our worlds are intact. If we surrender now, we can survive. If we continue fighting, humanity will erase us from existence. Thraxis closed his eyes. He thought about his ancestors, the great warriors who had built the Zoltharian Empire. What would they think of an emperor who surrendered without fighting to the last soldier? But then he thought about his children, his grandchildren, the billions of Zoltharians who were going about their lives unaware that their emperor's pride might doom them all. Send the surrender, he said. Unconditional. We accept all of humanity's terms. The news of Zoltharian surrender spread across the galaxy within hours. Species that had watched the conflict from a safe distance suddenly realized the implications. Humanity had defeated one of the galaxy's major military powers in less than a month. And they had done it while holding back weapons like the Ravagers until the very end. On Concordia Prime, Praetor Velcane called an emergency council session. Every delegate attended. The chamber that had been half empty during Chen's plea was now packed to capacity. Members of the council. Velcane began, his voice strained. We face an unprecedented situation. Humanity has revealed military capabilities far beyond what we understood. They have defeated the Zoltharian Empire in 28 days. Their weapons technology surpasses our own by what appears to be centuries. We must address this. Ambassador Chen, who had accepted his new role as senior advisor, stood at the human delegation's position. He looked different than he had a month ago. The desperation was gone, so was the diplomatic softness. What remained was a cold, hard authority. Praetor Velcane, Chen said. I believe I warned you this would happen. Velcane's four eyes focused on the human. Ambassador Chen, the council acknowledges that humanity's warnings were not taken seriously. However, your species has now revealed that it has been concealing its true nature for over a century. This deception was necessary, Chen interrupted. When we made first contact, we accidentally demonstrated our weapons to the Vrixian explorers. Do you know what happened next, Praetor? Your predecessors nearly went to war with us out of fear. They saw 17 disabled ships and concluded that humanity was a threat to galactic peace. So we made a choice. We hid our capabilities. We appeared weak and harmless. We integrated into your society by pretending to be something we were not. A delegate from the Vrixian Commonwealth stood up. She was an elderly female with silver scales. I remember those days. I was a junior officer on one of the ships that encountered the human patrol. What we saw was terrifying. The human vessel moved faster than our sensors could track. It fired weapons that passed through our shields as if they did not exist. When our fleet was disabled, we expected death. Instead, the humans sent a message. We apologize for startling you. Please wait for medical assistance. They were apologizing while our fleet floated helplessly in space. She looked around the chamber. I spent my entire career believing humans were weak because they showed us weakness. Now I understand. They were not weak. They were merciful. There is a difference. The Pelthian delegate, the same one who had mocked Chen, spoke in a small voice. What do humans want from us now? Chen looked at her. The same thing we have always wanted. Peace. Cooperation. To be part of this galactic community. But on our terms, not yours. We will not hide anymore. We will not pretend to be helpless while species like the Zoltharians attack us. If that makes you uncomfortable, we understand. But this is who we are. Warlord Kresh, whose military had been destroyed by human forces, stood up. His voice was bitter. You speak of peace while your weapons disassemble ships at the molecular level. You speak of cooperation while your fleets blockade our worlds. You are tyrants wearing a mask of civility. Admiral Kovac, standing behind Chen, stepped forward. Warlord Kresh, you attacked civilian colonies. You killed children. You laughed when we begged you to stop. Every weapon we have used, every ship we have deployed, has been in response to your aggression. We did not start this war, you did. We are simply finishing it. The Council should have protected us. Kresh roared. You are supposed to maintain peace. The Council did nothing, Kovac said coldly. We asked for help. We followed proper procedures. We tried diplomacy. You ignored all of it. So we protected ourselves. If that makes us tyrants, so be it. But our people are still alive, which is more than I can say for the 30,000 you murdered. The chamber erupted into argument. Some species supported humanity's actions. Others condemned them. A few called for sanctions or even military intervention to contain the human threat. Velkane let the debate continue for nearly an hour. Finally, he raised his hand for silence. The Council will now vote on a resolution. All species are asked to support a formal investigation into humanity's concealed military assets, with possible sanctions if violations of Council law are found. All in favor? Chen watched the voting display. 300 species voted in favor. That was concerning. But then the opposition count appeared. 550 species voted against the resolution. Velkane looked stunned. The resolution fails. A delegate from the Therian Collective, a species known for their military expertise, stood up. Praetor Velkane, I voted against your resolution, and I will explain why. Humanity did not violate any council laws. They registered their ships according to regulations. They paid their fees. They participated in peacekeeping operations. They simply did not volunteer information about their full capabilities. That is not illegal. That is prudent. Another delegate agreed. Furthermore, the Zoltharians attacked first. Humanity responded in self-defense. Their response was overwhelming, yes, but legally justified. I will not vote to punish a species for being better at war than we expected. Velkane realized he was losing control of the situation. What about the Ravagers? Those weapons are clearly designed for mass destruction. They should be banned under Council regulations regarding weapons of mass destruction. Chen smiled, and there was no warmth in it. Praetor, the Ravagers do not kill anyone. They disassemble ships while allowing crew to evacuate. According to your own laws, they are less destructive than conventional weapons because they minimize casualties. Would you like us to use more lethal weapons instead? The Praetor had no answer for that. Over the following weeks, the structure of galactic politics shifted. Species that had once dismissed humanity now approached them with respect and sometimes fear. Trade agreements were renegotiated. Defense pacts were proposed. Several smaller species requested that human peacekeeping forces be stationed in their territories as protection against larger, aggressive neighbors. The Zoltharian Empire began the process of dismantling its military infrastructure under human supervision. Trials were scheduled for Emperor Thraxus and the military leaders who had ordered attacks on civilian populations. The occupied worlds were released, their populations finally free after decades of oppression. But not everyone was happy with the new order. Praetor Velkane watched his influence erode as the Council fractured into pro-human and anti-human factions. He had led the Council for 20 years, maintaining a careful balance of power. Now that balance was gone. In his private chambers, Velkane met with a dozen other delegates. They represented some of the most powerful species in the galaxy. The Arconian, the Helix Collective, the Vormian Star Empire, and others. Humanity has upset the natural order, Velkane said. They are too powerful, too dangerous. If we allow this to continue, they will dominate the entire galaxy within a generation. The Vormian ambassador, a crystalline being who communicated through light pulses, flashed a response. What do you propose? Military action would be suicidal. Economic sanctions would fail because half the Council now trades with humans. What option remains? Velkane looked at each delegate in turn. We form a coalition. 12 species with legitimate concerns about human expansion. We do not attack them directly. We cannot win that fight, but we can contain them. We can limit their influence. We can make sure they understand that power has consequences. The meeting continued late into the night cycle. Plans were made. Resources were allocated. Messages were sent to military commands across 12 different species. None of them realized that every word of their conversation was being recorded by a human intelligence agent who had infiltrated the Praetor's staff 3 years earlier. Humanity had not spent 150 years hiding in the shadows, without learning how to gather information. When Admiral Kovac received the intelligence report, she read it twice. Then she called Admiral Chen, who was still serving as senior advisor despite his desire to retire. Chen, we have a problem. Velcane is organizing a coalition against us. 12 species. They are calling it a police action to contain human expansion. Chen felt tired. How large are their combined forces? 8,000 ships. Maybe 12,000 if they mobilize reserves. They are planning to establish a blockade around human space, preventing us from expanding further. Can we defeat them? Kovac laughed without humor. Chen, we could defeat them in a week. That is not the problem. The problem is what it would mean. If we destroy another coalition, we will become the villains of galactic history. Every species will fear us. We will be isolated, hated, and alone. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then we give them what they want. Let them establish their blockade. Let them feel like they are containing us. And then we demonstrate one final time what happens when people push humanity too far. You have a plan? I have an idea. But Admiral, you are not going to like it. The coalition fleet assembled at the edge of human space 3 months after the Zoltharian surrender. 12 species had contributed ships, creating an armada of 8,000 vessels. It was an impressive display of unity. The largest multi-species military force assembled since the Council's founding. Praetor Velcane commanded the coalition from his personal flagship, the Eternal Vigilance. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in the fleet. The humans had made no aggressive moves since learning about the coalition. Instead, they had withdrawn their forces deeper into their own territory, abandoning several border stations without explanation. They are afraid, the Vormian ambassador said, her crystalline form pulsing with satisfaction. The great human war machine retreats before a unified galactic front. Admiral Kesh, a tactical officer from the Helix Collective, was less certain. Or they are luring us into a trap. Everything we know about human military doctrine suggests they excel at ambush tactics and asymmetric warfare. This withdrawal may be strategic. Then we will be cautious, Velcane replied. We establish a perimeter. We do not enter human territory. We simply contain them. Eventually they will accept our terms or their economy will collapse from isolation. The coalition fleet moved into position, creating a blockade line that stretched across 20 star systems. It was a solid defensive formation, designed to repel any human assault. Each ship maintained sensor contact with its neighbors. Supply lines were established. The coalition was prepared for a long siege. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Human ships occasionally approached the blockade, scanned it from a distance, and retreated. No communication attempts, no threats. Just quiet observation. Velcane found this unnerving. He had expected rage, demands, or at least some attempt at negotiation. Instead, the humans were silent. On Earth, in the same Pacific Ocean bunker where Operation Reckoning had been planned, Admiral Kovac stood before a holographic map of the galaxy. Admiral Chen stood beside her, along with 50 senior military officers. The coalition has established their blockade, Kovac said. They believe they have contained us. It is time to show them why humanity does not fear containment. Colonel Morrison stepped forward. Admiral, the assets are in position. We have spent 3 months preparing for this. But I must ask one more time, are we certain this is the right approach? What we are about to do will change everything, Chen answered instead of Kovac. Colonel, humanity made a mistake 150 years ago. We hid our true capabilities because we feared rejection. That fear led to misunderstanding. That misunderstanding led to the Zoltharian attack. 30,000 people died because we were not honest about what we are. I will not make that mistake again. If the galaxy fears us, so be it, but they will fear us while understanding exactly why they should be afraid. Kovac nodded. Begin Operation Revelation. Across human space, carefully positioned assets activated. These were not warships. They were something far more significant. At Proxima Centauri, the star system closest to Earth, a structure that had been orbiting the Sun for 70 years, suddenly became visible. It was massive, nearly 1,000 kilometers in diameter, shaped like a ring. Energy readings spiked as fusion reactors came online. Similar structures appeared in 17 other human systems. They had always been there, hidden by advanced stealth technology that bent light around them. Now they revealed themselves to any species with sensors capable of long-range detection. In the coalition fleet, alarm klaxons began sounding. Sensor officers stared at their displays in shock. Praetor, we are detecting massive energy signatures from inside human territory. The power outputs are incredible. Each one is generating more energy than an entire star system. What are they? Velcane demanded. Unknown, but Praetor. The energy signatures match theoretical designs for stellar-scale construction platforms. They are shipyards, but not like any we have seen before. If our estimates are correct, each one could construct a battleship in less than a day. Velcane felt cold fear settling into his chest. How many? 18 confirmed. Possibly more we have not detected yet. The Vormian ambassador's light pulses became erratic. This is impossible. Technology like that should take centuries to develop. How long have they had these facilities? According to the energy decay patterns, some of them have been active for nearly a century, the sensor officer replied. Before Velcane could respond, another report came in. Praetor, we are detecting fleet movements. Thousands of ships are emerging from human territory. Prepare for combat, Velcane ordered, but the human ships did not attack. Instead, they took up positions behind the coalition blockade, effectively surrounding the coalition fleet. Within an hour, the situation had reversed. The coalition, which had believed it was containing humanity, was now trapped between human forces. Admiral Kovac broadcast on an open channel. Her image appeared on every coalition ship. Praetor Velcane, I am Admiral Sarah Kovac. Your coalition fleet is currently surrounded by 52,000 human warships. We have weapons locked on every vessel in your formation, but we are not here to fight, Velcane found his voice. Then why this display of force? Because you need to understand something, Kovac said. When Ambassador Chen stood before the Galactic Council and warned that humanity was holding back, he was telling the truth. But he was not talking about just our military. We have been holding back our entire civilization. On coalition screens, data began appearing, files that human intelligence had compiled over decades, detailed information about human capabilities that had never been shared with the galactic community. Population statistics, Kovac continued. The Council believes Earth has 12 billion humans. The actual number is 43 billion. We have another 97 billion spread across 600 colony worlds. Most of these colonies do not appear in galactic databases because we never registered them. We did not lie about them. We simply did not volunteer the information. Industrial capacity. You believe humanity has limited manufacturing ability. In truth, those 18 stellar shipyards you just detected can construct 24,000 warships per year. We have been running them at minimal capacity for 7 decades because we had no need for more ships. If we went to full production, we could build 300,000 vessels annually. Military strength. You are currently facing 52,000 warships. We have another 180,000 in reserve. We have 4 million soldiers in active service. We have 600 million in reserve forces that can be mobilized within a month. Every human colony world is fortified to withstand planetary invasion. Every civilian habitat has enough weapons to arm its entire population. Velcane stared at the data, feeling his worldview collapse. Why would you hide all of this? Because we were trying to fit into your society, Kovac said, and for the first time her voice carried emotion. We wanted to be part of the galactic community. We wanted friends, allies, and peaceful coexistence. But we learned, through brutal experience, that the galaxy only respects strength. So we hid our strength and pretended to be weak. We thought that would make us acceptable. Chen appeared beside Kovac on the broadcast. Praetor, I am going to tell you a story. 10,000 years ago, humanity lived on one planet. We fought amongst ourselves constantly. Wars killed millions. Weapons became more destructive with each generation. Eventually, we developed devices that could destroy entire cities in seconds. We called them nuclear weapons. We used them. Twice. In a war between 2 human nations. 2 cities were obliterated. Hundreds of thousands died. And when we saw what we had done, we were horrified. We realized we had created weapons that could end our entire species. So we established rules. Laws of war. Agreements that banned certain weapons. Cultural changes that made warfare less acceptable. It took us thousands of years, but we learned restraint. We learned that having power does not mean using it. We learned that the strongest warrior is not the one who kills the most, but the one who knows when not to kill. That is why we hid our capabilities from you. Not because we were weak, but because we were trying to be better than our history. The coalition fleet sat in stunned silence. Finally, Admiral Kesh from the Helix Collective spoke. Admiral Chen, if humanity is so powerful, why did you allow the Zoltharians to attack you? Why did you wait for council approval before responding? Because we hoped the council would act, Chen said quietly. We hoped that our fellow galactic citizens would stand with us against aggression. We hoped that showing restraint would be seen as a virtue, not a weakness. We were wrong. The council did nothing. You laughed at our warnings. And 30,000 humans died because we trusted a system that failed us. Kovacs took over again. Praetor Velcane, your coalition fleet is not here because you fear human expansion. You are here because you fear human power. You saw what we did to the Zoltharians, and you realized that we could do the same to you. So you gathered your allies and tried to contain the threat. I understand that instinct, but you made the same mistake the Zoltharians made. You assumed we wanted to conquer you. We do not want your territory. We do not want to rule over other species. We do not want an empire. We simply want to be left alone to live our lives in peace. But if you force us to fight, we will win. Every single time. Velcane looked at the tactical displays surrounding his command throne. The numbers were clear. Even if every coalition ship fought to destruction, they would be overwhelmed by sheer numerical superiority. And that was assuming the humans did not deploy weapons like the Ravagers. What are your terms? He asked quietly. Dissolve the coalition, Kovacs said. Return your fleets to your home territories, and most importantly, leave humanity alone. We will maintain our borders. We will honor our trade agreements. We will participate in council activities, but we will not tolerate any more attempts to contain, control, or threaten us. And if we refuse? Kovacs smiled, and it was the saddest expression Velcane had ever seen. Then we will demonstrate what the Ravagers were designed to replace. Praetor, humanity has weapons that make molecular disassembly look merciful. We have devices that can ignite atmospheres. We have viruses that target specific genetic markers. We have kinetic weapons that can crack planets like eggs. We have quantum bombs that can collapse space-time itself. We built all of these things during our wars with ourselves. We swore we would never use them again. We locked them away in vaults that require unanimous human approval to open. But if you force our hand, if you threaten our existence, we will use every weapon we have ever created. And Praetor, I promise you do not want that. In his private chambers on the Eternal Vigilance, Velcane sat alone. His 4 eyes stared at a data pad showing the full scope of human capabilities. The numbers were staggering. The implications were terrifying. A message appeared on his personal screen. It was from Admiral Chen. Praetor, I know what you are thinking. You are wondering if this is a bluff, if humanity is exaggerating to intimidate you. So I am going to show you something that will prove we are not. The screen changed to display historical footage. It was old, the image quality poor, but the content was clear. A human city existed in one frame. In the next frame, there was only a flash of light. In the third frame, the city was gone, replaced by a mushroom-shaped cloud rising kilometers into the sky. That was Hiroshima, Chen's voice said over the footage. The year was 1945 by human reckoning. We had just developed nuclear weapons. That single bomb killed 80,000 people instantly. Another 60,000 died slowly from radiation. It was one of 2 cities we destroyed that year. More footage appeared. Different cities, different bombs, but all showing the same horrific power. These are our early nuclear weapons, primitive by current standards. The devices we have now are thousands of times more powerful. We could sterilize every Zoltharian world with weapons we developed 900 years ago. Everything we have shown you, the Ravagers, the stellar shipyards, the fleet numbers, that is not our most dangerous capability. Our most dangerous capability is our willingness to use ultimate force if pushed too far. The footage changed again. This time it showed human soldiers liberating prisoners from camps, medical teams treating plague victims, engineers rebuilding destroyed cities. But we are also capable of this. Mercy, compassion, rebuilding. We contain both extremes, Praetor. We can be your greatest nightmare or your most loyal ally. The The choice has always been yours. Chen's face reappeared on screen. I am sending you this privately because I think you deserve the truth. You were trying to protect your people. I understand that. But you cannot protect them from us through force. You can only protect them by accepting us as equals. Dissolve the coalition. Go home. Tell the Council that humanity is not a threat to be contained. We are simply a species that knows how to defend itself. Velcane watched the message 3 times. Then he made his decision. The coalition dissolved within 48 hours. Ships returned to their home territories. Praetor Velcane addressed the Galactic Council, admitting that the coalition had made a mistake. He did not go into details about what humanity had revealed, but his tone made it clear that resistance was futile. Some species protested. A few called Velcane a coward. But most of the Council simply felt relief that the situation had not escalated into open warfare. 6 months had passed since the coalition dissolved. The galaxy had settled into an uneasy new normal. Humanity remained part of the Galactic Council, but their relationship with other species had fundamentally changed. Where there had once been casual dismissal, now there was cautious respect. Where there had been mockery, now there was silence. On Concordia Prime, the council chambers felt different. When Ambassador Chen entered for the monthly session, delegates made room for him. Some nodded respectfully, others avoided eye contact. The Pelthian delegate, who had once laughed at his warnings, now greeted him with genuine courtesy. Chen took his position in the human section. Admiral Kovac stood beside him, wearing her full military uniform. The council had requested that human military leadership attend sessions now, a recognition that humanity's voice carried weight beyond simple diplomacy. Praetor Velcane called the session to order. He looked older than he had 6 months ago. The 4 golden eyes that had once radiated confidence now showed exhaustion. This council recognizes Ambassador Chen of humanity. He is requested to address us on an important matter. Chen stood and walked to the central platform. He had rehearsed this speech carefully, but now that the moment had arrived, he wondered if words would be enough. Members of the council, he began. 6 months ago, humanity revealed its true capabilities to the galaxy. We showed you our military strength, our industrial capacity, and our weapons technology. Many of you were frightened by what you saw. Some of you still are. I understand that fear. Today I want to address it directly. The chamber was silent. 850 species waited to hear what the human would say. Fear is not an unreasonable response to power, Chen continued. But I want to explain why humanity chose to hide that power for so long, and why we are choosing to be honest about it now. A holographic display activated behind Chen. It showed Earth as it had appeared 10,000 years ago. Before spaceflight, before electricity, before civilization as the Council would recognize it. This was my homeworld long ago. Humans lived in small tribes. We fought over resources, territory, and survival. As we grew more numerous, our wars grew larger. We developed tools, then weapons of mass destruction. We killed each other by the millions. Our entire history is written in blood. The display changed, showing images from human history. Battlefields, bombed cities, concentration camps, footage that made several delegates look away. We did terrible things to each other, things that haunt us even now. We created weapons that could end our species. We built systems of oppression that treated our own kind as less than human. We committed genocides, launched world wars, and came within minutes of destroying our entire civilization multiple times. Chen paused, letting the images speak for themselves. But eventually we learned. Not quickly, not easily. But we learned that strength without restraint leads to destruction. We learned that the most powerful weapons are the ones you never use. We learned that true civilization is measured not by your capacity for violence, but by your capacity for mercy. The display changed again, showing human achievements, hospitals, schools, ships carrying relief supplies to disaster zones, human and alien workers building together on colony worlds. When we encountered the Vrixian exploration fleet 150 years ago, we made a choice. We could reveal ourselves as we truly were, a species with a long history of warfare and weapons that frightened even us. Or we could show you only our peaceful face and hope that would be enough. We chose peace. We chose to hide our capabilities because we did not want to be feared. We wanted to be accepted. A Vrixian delegate stood up. It was the same elderly female who had defended humanity during the earlier emergency session. Ambassador Chen, speaking as someone who witnessed first contact, I want to say that your people did show restraint that day. When our fleet was disabled, you could have destroyed us. Instead, you sent medical assistance. That choice shaped how my species views humanity. Chen nodded gratefully. Thank you, Ambassador. But our restraint came with a cost. By appearing weak, we invited aggression. The Zoltharians attacked us because they thought we could not fight back. 30,000 humans died because we had hidden our true strength. That is why we chose to reveal ourselves. Not to threaten anyone, but to ensure that no one would make the Zoltharians' mistake again. Praetor Velcane spoke. Ambassador Chen, humanity has made its point. The galaxy now understands that you are not to be trifled with, but many species wonder what comes next. Will humanity seek to expand its influence? Will you use your power to dominate the Council? No, Chen said simply. Humanity wants what we have always wanted. Peace, prosperity, the chance to explore the universe and learn from other species. We do not want an empire. We have seen where that path leads. Our own history is full of empires that rose and fell, each one leaving mountains of dead behind them. We learned that lesson. We do not need to repeat it. Then why maintain such a large military? Asked a delegate from the Vormian Star Empire. If you truly seek peace, why do you need hundreds of thousands of warships? Admiral Kovac stepped forward to answer that question. Because peace is not the natural state of the universe. It is something that must be actively maintained. Humanity learned that lesson the hard way. We tried disarmament once after one of our world wars. We reduced our militaries, destroyed our weapons, and believed that would prevent future conflicts. It did not. Aggressive nations simply rearmed while peaceful ones were left defenseless. So we learned a different lesson. We learned that peace comes from strength. Not the strength to conquer, but the strength to defend. Our military exists to protect human lives and to ensure that what happened at New Sarajevo never happens again. We do not want to use it, but we will if necessary. The debate continued for hours. Some delegates expressed continued concerns about human power. Others argued that humanity had shown remarkable restraint considering their capabilities. A few suggested that perhaps other species should follow humanity's example and invest more in self-defense. Finally, as the session was drawing to a close, Chen raised his hand for one final statement. There is one more thing I need to say. Praetor Velcane, please approach. Velcane looked surprised, but he descended from his position and stood beside Chen at the central platform. Praetor, Chen said, 6 months ago you organized a coalition to contain humanity. You believed we were a threat. You were wrong, but your intentions were not malicious. You were trying to protect the species under Council protection. I understand that, and I want to thank you. Velcane's 4 eyes widened. Thank me? For attempting to blockade your territory. Yes, because your actions forced humanity to be honest. We had been hiding in the shadows for 150 years, lying through omission about what we are. Your coalition made us reveal the truth, and while that truth is frightening, it is also liberating. We no longer have to pretend to be something we are not. Chen extended his hand in the human gesture of reconciliation. I propose that we start over. No more secrets. No more deception. Humanity will be honest about our capabilities, and we ask that other species accept us as we truly are. Not as the weak newcomers we pretended to be, but as a species with both the capacity for war and the wisdom to choose peace. Velcane looked at the extended hand. In human culture, this gesture signified trust and mutual respect. Slowly, he reached out and grasped Chen's hand in his own 4-fingered grip. I accept your proposal, Ambassador, and I apologize for doubting your intentions. The council chamber erupted in a mixture of applause and agitated discussion. The Pelthian delegate was openly weeping. The Therian military representative stood and saluted. Even the Zoltharian observer, a minor functionary who had replaced Warlord Kresh, looked impressed, but not everyone was pleased. A delegate from the Nexian cluster, a species known for their isolationist policies, stood up. This is all very touching, but it does not address the fundamental problem. Humanity is too powerful. One species should not have the capacity to threaten the entire galaxy. You are right, Kovac said, surprising everyone. One species should not have that much power. But the universe does not care about should. We have this power because we spent 10,000 years developing it. We cannot unmake that history. What we can do is use our power responsibly. How can we trust that you will? The Nexian demanded. Because we are implementing new protocols, Chen replied. Effective immediately, humanity is reinstating modified soft contact protocols. We will not hide our capabilities, but we will limit their deployment. Our stellar shipyards will operate at minimal capacity. Our reserve forces will remain in reserve. Our most destructive weapons will remain locked away under the same restrictions that have governed them for centuries. The difference, Kovac added, is that now everyone knows they exist. If another species attacks humanity or our allies, we will respond with overwhelming force. But if left in peace, we will remain peaceful. Think of it as deterrence through honest disclosure. Velcane considered this. You are proposing a new framework for galactic security. One where species are honest about their capabilities but choose restraint. This is different from the Council's traditional approach of collective security. Your traditional approach failed, Chen said bluntly. The Zoltharians attacked us while under Council protection, and the Council did nothing. 30,000 humans died because we relied on a system that could not protect us. We will never make that mistake again. We will protect ourselves, but we will also honor our commitments to the Council and to peaceful coexistence. The session ended with no formal vote, but with an understanding. Humanity would remain part of the galactic community, but on new terms. They would be honest about their power while exercising restraint in its use. The other species would accept humanity's military superiority, while trusting that it would not be abused. It was not a perfect solution, but it was a workable one. 3 months later, something unexpected happened. A new species made first contact with the Galactic Council. They were called the Krin, a militant race from the Galactic East. They arrived in Council space with 200 warships and demands for territory. The Council was paralyzed with fear. The Krin seemed powerful, aggressive, and unwilling to negotiate. Several species began preparing evacuation plans for their border worlds. Humanity sent a diplomatic team, led by Ambassador Chen. He requested a private meeting with the Krin High Commander, a massive warrior named Thorax who stood 3 meters tall and possessed 6 arms, each one ending in claws. The meeting took place on a neutral station. Thorax sat across from Chen, looking at the small human with contempt. You are the species everyone fears? You look weak, fragile. I expected more. Chen smiled politely. High Commander, let me tell you a story. Several months ago, another species thought the same thing. They were called the Zoltharians. They had 50,000 warships and believed themselves to be the strongest military power in the galaxy. They attacked human colonies because they thought we were weak. What happened to them? Thorax asked. We destroyed their entire fleet in 4 weeks. Their empire collapsed. Their emperor was tried for war crimes. Their military infrastructure was dismantled. Today, Zoltharian space is under human protection, and their people are slowly rebuilding under our supervision. Thorax laughed, a deep rumbling sound. You expect me to believe that this tiny species defeated an empire of 50,000 ships? Chen activated a holographic display. It showed footage from the Battle of Kepler. The Retribution destroying 300 Zoltharian vessels in 4 minutes. The Ravagers disassembling the home fleet. The simultaneous strikes across 47 star systems. Thorax stopped laughing. He watched the footage in silence. When it ended, he looked at Chen with new understanding. You let us come here with our warships. You let us make demands. You let us threaten the Council. Why? Because we wanted you to understand something, Chen said quietly. Power is not about how many ships you have or how strong your weapons are. Real power is having the ability to destroy your enemies and choosing not to. The Zoltharians learned that lesson the hard way. I am offering you the chance to learn it the easy way. What do you want from us? Join the Galactic Council. Follow the rules. Trade with us. Share your culture and learn from ours. Become part of the community. But if you choose violence, if you attack any council member, humanity will respond. And High Commander, I promise you do not want that response. Thorax was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. My species has conquered 15 worlds through force. We believed that military might was the measure of all things. But you are telling me there is another way? Yes, it is called civilization. It is harder than conquest. It requires patience, diplomacy, and sometimes compromise. But it is worth it. Humanity spent 10,000 years learning that lesson. We are offering to teach it to you now, so you do not have to learn it through blood and fire as we did. 2 weeks later, the Krin applied for council membership. They withdrew their territorial demands and began negotiating trade agreements. Thorax himself became a strong advocate for peaceful expansion rather than military conquest. The galaxy took notice. Species that had considered humanity a threat began to see them as a stabilizing force. The Galactic Council, which had been fracturing, began to cohere around new principles of honest disclosure and responsible power. On Earth, in a small apartment in Geneva, Admiral Chen finally retired. He was 70 years old, tired and ready to rest. He had spent 45 years in service to humanity, first as a diplomat and later as a military advisor. He had seen war and peace, death and reconciliation. Admiral Kovac visited him on his last day of service. "You could stay," she said. "We still need your counsel." "You have enough advisors now," Chen replied. "And I have given enough. Let someone younger take over. What will you do? I have a granddaughter on Mars. She is 7 years old and has never met me. I think I would like to spend time with her. Teach her about Earth, tell her stories. Be a grandfather instead of a diplomat." Kovac smiled. "You earned that. But Chen, before you go, I need to know. Do you think we did the right thing? Revealing ourselves, fighting the Zoltharians, forcing the galaxy to accept us as we are?" Chen looked out the window at the Geneva skyline. Lights were coming on as evening fell. Somewhere in the city, people were going about their lives unaware of how close they had come to galactic war. "I think we did what we had to do," he said finally. "We tried peace. We tried restraint. We tried fitting into their system. It failed. So we showed them what happens when you push humanity too far. Was it right? I do not know. But it was necessary. And maybe, just maybe, it will prevent future wars rather than cause them. And if it does not, if some species still decides to test us, then we remind them of the lesson we taught the Zoltharians. We are not the monsters of their nightmares, but we can be if we must. That choice has always been ours. And that is what makes us human." Kovac left him alone after that. Chen sat in his apartment as darkness fell over Geneva, thinking about everything that had happened. 30,000 dead, billions of Zoltharians displaced, an entire galactic order reshaped. All because humanity had finally stopped hiding and shown the universe what they truly were. In the end, the most dangerous thing about humanity was not their weapons or their numbers. It was their choice. The choice to be merciful when they could be ruthless. The choice to build when they could destroy. The choice to teach when they could conquer. That choice, Chen believed, was what would ultimately define humanity's place in the galaxy. 10 years passed. The Galactic Council had transformed into something new. It was no longer the fractured, ineffective body that had failed to protect its members. Under a new charter, species were encouraged to maintain their own defenses while cooperating on mutual threats. Humanity provided military training to dozens of species who had previously relied entirely on Council protection. The Zoltharian territories had been reorganized. Emperor Thraxus had died in prison, some said from shame. His successor, a younger Zoltharian named Vex who had once served as a general, focused on rebuilding his people's culture without the militarism that had defined them for centuries. Human advisors helped establish democratic institutions. Former conquered worlds were given independence or chose to remain in a new, voluntary confederation. Trade flourished. Human technology, no longer hidden, revolutionized dozens of industries. In exchange, humanity gained access to alien knowledge in fields like biology, quantum mechanics, and dimensional physics. Cultural exchanges brought human art, music, and literature to alien worlds, while humans learned from civilizations that had existed for millions of years. But not everything was peaceful. In the Outer Rim, a species called the Devourers emerged from dark space. They were different from anything the galaxy had encountered before. They did not negotiate. They did not communicate. They simply consumed. Entire worlds were stripped of all biological matter within days of their arrival. The Council issued a desperate plea for help. Humanity responded. Admiral Kovac, now in her 80s but still sharp as ever, took command of a joint defense fleet. 50,000 human warships joined with 30,000 vessels from allied species. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. The Battle of the Outer Rim lasted 3 months. The Devourers were unlike any enemy humanity had faced. They adapted to weapons, evolved defenses, and showed no fear of death. But they had never encountered an enemy quite like humanity either. The humans used tactics from their ancient wars. They studied the enemy, learned their patterns, and exploited their weaknesses. When conventional weapons failed, humanity deployed biological agents specifically designed to target Devourer physiology. When the Devourers adapted to those, humanity used quantum weapons that destabilized their molecular structure. The Devourers were pushed back, system by system, until finally they retreated into dark space and did not return. The galaxy had survived, but only because humanity had been willing to use every weapon in their arsenal. In the aftermath, something remarkable happened. Praetor Velcane, who had remained in his position despite the coalition disaster, called for a new vote. He proposed that humanity be given a permanent seat on the Council's Security Committee, with authority to coordinate galactic defense operations. The vote was not unanimous. Some species still feared human power, but the majority recognized that humanity had saved them from extinction. The motion passed with 743 votes in favor. Ambassador Maria Santos, who had replaced Chen after his retirement, accepted the position with a speech that echoed her predecessor's warnings. Humanity accepts this responsibility, but we do so with full awareness of what it means. We will defend the galaxy against external threats. We will train your forces and share our technology, but we will not become the galaxy's rulers. We will not impose our values on unwilling species. We remain partners, not masters. On Mars, former Ambassador Chen watched the ceremony with his granddaughter beside him. Eliana was 17 now, studying xenobiology at the university. She had grown up in a galaxy where humanity was respected and feared in equal measure. "Grandpa," she asked, "do you think we did the right thing? Becoming so powerful that everyone depends on us?" Chen considered the question carefully. "I think we did the only thing we could do. Humanity tried being weak. That did not protect us. We tried hiding our strength. That invited attack. So we chose to be honest about what we are. And yes, that makes others depend on us. But it also gives us the responsibility to live up to their trust. But what if we fail? What if humanity becomes what everyone feared we would become? Then future generations will have to make better choices than we did. That is the burden of power, Eliana. It is not just having it. It is choosing every day not to abuse it. That choice never gets easier and it never ends. But it is what separates civilization from tyranny." Eliana thought about that for a while. Then she smiled. "You know, my professor says that humans are the most interesting species he has ever studied. Not because we are the strongest, but because we are the most contradictory. We are capable of terrible violence and incredible compassion. We can destroy worlds or save them, and we choose both depending on the circumstances." Chen laughed. "Your professor is wise. That contradiction is what makes us human. We contain multitudes, as one of our poets once said. We are both the monsters in the dark and the light that drives them away. Understanding that duality is the key to understanding humanity." Far away on Concordia Prime, in a secure chamber beneath the council headquarters, something was being built. It was a memorial, designed by artists from 100 different species. At its center stood a holographic display showing the names of every being who had died in the conflicts of the past decade. 30,000 humans from New Sarajevo, 4 billion Zoltharians who had died in the war and its aftermath, 2 million soldiers from various species who had fallen fighting the Devourers, countless others whose names were lost but whose sacrifice was remembered. Ambassador Santos stood before the memorial during its dedication ceremony. Representatives from every council species attended. Even Warlord Kresh, released from prison after serving his sentence, stood in the crowd. He was a broken figure now, his pride shattered, but he had insisted on attending. "This memorial," Santos said, "represents both our failure and our hope. It reminds us that power without wisdom leads to tragedy, that fear without understanding breeds conflict, that strength without mercy creates only death. Humanity learned these lessons through terrible experience. We paid for our wisdom with mountains of dead. We built our civilization on the ashes of our mistakes, and we swore we would never forget the cost. But we also learned something else. We learned that those who survive tragedy have a responsibility to prevent it from happening again. That those who have known war must be the strongest advocates for peace. That those who possess the power to destroy must be the first to choose creation." She gestured to the memorial. "Every name here represents a choice. The choice to fight when fighting was necessary. The choice to die protecting others. the choice to sacrifice for something greater than ourselves. We honor them not by seeking revenge but by building a galaxy where such sacrifices are no longer needed. Humanity will defend this galaxy. We will stand against threats both external and internal. We will use our power to protect the weak and restrain the strong, but we will never forget that we are not conquerors. We are guardians. And the moment we forget that difference is the moment we become the monsters we once feared. The ceremony ended in silence. No applause. No celebration. Just quiet reflection on what had been lost and what had been gained. That night, Praetor Velcane requested a private meeting with Ambassador Santos. They met in the same room where Chen had once pleaded for council intervention. The room where humanity's warnings had been dismissed. "Ambassador," Velcane said quietly, "I owe your species an apology. When Chen stood here and warned us, I did not listen. I thought humanity was weak. I thought your pleas were the whimpering of frightened children. I was wrong, and my arrogance cost millions of lives." Santos regarded him steadily. "You were not alone in that mistake, Praetor. The entire council dismissed us, but you were the one who had the courage to change. You dissolved the coalition. You supported humanity's inclusion in galactic leadership. You have spent 10 years working to repair the damage. That counts for something. Does it? Tell me, Ambassador, do you think the galaxy is better now than it was before? Or have we simply traded one form of threat for another?" Santos considered the question. "The galaxy is not better or worse, Praetor. It is simply more honest. We no longer pretend that peace comes without strength, or that civilization exists without the capacity for violence. We acknowledge what we are, all of us, and we try to be better than our capabilities would suggest." "That is a heavy burden for one species to carry." "Yes, but someone had to carry it. The Zoltharians proved that leaving galactic security to the Council alone was insufficient. The Devourers proved that external threats are real and terrifying. Humanity has the capability to address these challenges, so we do. Not because we want to, but because we must." Velcane stood and walked to the window overlooking Concordia Prime. The station glittered with lights from 1,000 different species going about their lives. "I am old, Ambassador. I will retire soon. Younger leaders will take my place. What message should I leave for them about humanity?" "Tell them the truth," Santos said. "Tell them that humanity is dangerous. Tell them we have weapons that could end civilizations. Tell them we have the capacity for both creation and destruction. But also tell them that we choose every day to be more than our weapons. We choose cooperation over conquest. We choose mercy over massacre. We choose the hard path of civilization over the easy path of domination. And if future generations of humans do not make those choices," Santos smiled sadly, "then it will be up to species like yours to remind us why those choices matter. That is the true purpose of the Council, Praetor, not to control power, but to ensure that those with power remember why restraint is valuable. We all keep each other honest. We all hold each other accountable. That is what civilization means." Velcane turned from the window. For the first time in years, his 4 golden eyes showed something other than weariness. They showed hope. "Perhaps you are right, Ambassador. Perhaps this new galaxy, born from conflict and fear, will become something better than what came before." "Perhaps," Santos agreed, "but only if we work for it. Every day, every choice, every moment when we decide to build rather than destroy. That is the price of civilization. That is the burden we all share." They stood together in silence, watching the lights of Concordia Prime, thinking about the future that humanity and the galaxy would build together. And somewhere, on a small blue world called Earth, children played in parks, unaware of the sacrifices that had been made for their safety. They laughed and ran and dreamed of stars as human children had done for thousands of years. The difference was that now when they looked up at those stars, they saw not an empty universe but a community. A community that had learned, through blood and fear and hard-won wisdom, that the greatest strength was not the power to destroy, but the wisdom to choose peace. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy, not their weapons or their ships or their vast military might, but the lesson they had learned through 10,000 years of warfare, that true power lies in restraint, and that the strongest warrior is the one who knows when not to fight. It was a lesson the galaxy would never forget, and it was a lesson humanity would spend the rest of its existence trying to live up to. One choice at a time, one day at a time, forever walking the line between the monsters they could be and the guardians they chose to become. Eliana thought about that for a while. Then she smiled. You know, my professor says that humans are the most interesting species he has ever studied. Not because we are the strongest, but because we are the most contradictory. We are capable of terrible violence and incredible compassion. We can destroy worlds or save them, and we choose both depending on the circumstances. Chen laughed. Your professor is wise. That contradiction is what makes us human. We contain multitudes, as one of our poets once said. We are both the monsters in the dark and the light that drives them away. Understanding that duality is the key to understanding humanity. Far away on Concordia Prime, in a secure chamber beneath the council headquarters, something was being built. It was a memorial, designed by artists from 100 different species. At its center stood a holographic display showing the names of every being who had died in the conflicts of the past decade. 30,000 humans from New Sarajevo, 4 billion Zoltharians who had died in the war and its aftermath, 2 million soldiers from various species who had fallen fighting the Devourers, countless others whose names were lost but whose sacrifice was remembered. Ambassador Santos stood before the memorial during its dedication ceremony. Representatives from every council species attended. Even Warlord Kresh, released from prison after serving his sentence, stood in the crowd. He was a broken figure now, his pride shattered, but he had insisted on attending. This memorial, Santos said, represents both our failure and our hope. It reminds us that power without wisdom leads to tragedy, that fear without understanding breeds conflict, that strength without mercy creates only death. Humanity learned these lessons through terrible experience. We paid for our wisdom with mountains of dead. We built our civilization on the ashes of our mistakes, and we swore we would never forget the cost. But we also learned something else. We learned that those who survive tragedy have a responsibility to prevent it from happening again. That those who have known war must be the strongest advocates for peace. That those who possess the power to destroy must be the first to choose creation. She gestured to the memorial. Every name here represents a choice. The choice to fight when fighting was necessary. The choice to die protecting others. The choice to sacrifice for something greater than ourselves. We honor them not by seeking revenge, but by building a galaxy where such sacrifices are no longer needed. Humanity will defend this galaxy. We will stand against threats both external and internal. We will use our power to protect the weak and restrain the strong, but we will never forget that we are not conquerors. We are guardians. And the moment we forget that difference is the moment we become the monsters we once feared. The ceremony ended in silence. No applause. No celebration. Just quiet reflection on what had been lost and what had been gained. That night, Praetor Velkane requested a private meeting with Ambassador Santos. They met in the same room where Chen had once pleaded for council intervention. The room where humanity's warnings had been dismissed. Ambassador, Velkane said quietly, I owe your species an apology. When Chen stood here and warned us, I did not listen. I thought humanity was weak. I thought your pleas were the whimpering of frightened children. I was wrong, and my arrogance cost millions of lives. Santos regarded him steadily. You were not alone in that mistake, Praetor. The entire council dismissed us, but you were the one who had the courage to change. You dissolved the coalition. You supported humanity's inclusion in galactic leadership. You have spent 10 years working to repair the damage. That counts for something. Does it? Tell me, Ambassador, do you think the galaxy is better now than it was before? Or have we simply traded one form of threat for another? Santos considered the question. The galaxy is not better or worse, Praetor. It is simply more honest. We no longer pretend that peace comes without strength, or that civilization exists without the capacity for violence. We acknowledge what we are, all of us, and we try to be better than our capabilities would suggest. That is a heavy burden for one species to carry. Yes, but someone had to carry it. The Zoltharians proved that leaving galactic security to the Council alone was insufficient. The Devourers proved that external threats are real and terrifying. Humanity has the capability to address these challenges, so we do. Not because we want to, but because we must. Velkane stood and walked to the window overlooking Concordia Prime. The station glittered with lights from 1,000 different species going about their lives. I am old, Ambassador. I will retire soon. Younger leaders will take my place. What message should I leave for them about humanity? Tell them the truth, Santos said. Tell them that humanity is dangerous. Tell them we have weapons that could end civilizations. Tell them we have the capacity for both creation and destruction, but also tell them that we choose every day to be more than our weapons. We choose cooperation over conquest. We choose mercy over massacre. We choose the hard path of civilization over the easy path of domination. And if future generations of humans do not make those choices, Santos smiled sadly, then it will be up to species like yours to remind us why those choices matter. That is the true purpose of the Council, Praetor, not to control power, but to ensure that those with power remember why restraint is valuable. We all keep each other honest. We all hold each other accountable. That is what civilization means. Velcane turned from the window. For the first time in years, his 4 golden eyes showed something other than weariness. They showed hope. Perhaps you are right, Ambassador. Perhaps this new galaxy, born from conflict and fear, will become something better than what came before. Perhaps, Santos agreed, but only if we work for it. Every day, every choice, every moment when we decide to build rather than destroy. That is the price of civilization. That is the burden we all share. They stood together in silence, watching the lights of Concordia Prime, thinking about the future that humanity and the galaxy would build together. And somewhere, on a small blue world called Earth, children played in parks, unaware of the sacrifices that had been made for their safety. They laughed and ran and dreamed of stars as human children had done for thousands of years. The difference was that now when they looked up at those stars, they saw not an empty universe but a community. A community that had learned, through blood and fear and hard-won wisdom, that the greatest strength was not the power to destroy, but the wisdom to choose peace. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy, not their weapons or their ships or their vast military might, but the lesson they had learned through 10,000 years of warfare, that true power lies in restraint, and that the strongest warrior is the one who knows when not to fight. It was a lesson the galaxy would never forget, and it was a lesson humanity would spend the rest of its existence trying to live up to. One choice at a time, one day at a time, forever walking the line between the monsters they could be and the guardians they chose to become.
Admiral James Wilson leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling of his small office at Earth Defense Command. The walls around him were covered with rejection letters and technical reports. All of them said the same thing. His battleship design was impossible. Unfeasible power requirements. Structure cannot withstand proposed weapon systems. Violates 3 known laws of physics. The latest rejection, from the Combined Earth Military Engineering Court, sat on his desk. Wilson picked it up and read the conclusion again. While Admiral Wilson's theoretical Thunderchild design shows creative thinking, it remains physically impossible to construct with current or projected technology. The power core alone would require an energy source that simply cannot exist. Wilson tossed the report back onto his desk and rubbed his tired eyes. 30 years in the Earth Defense Fleet, and all he had to show for it was a reputation as a dreamer who had lost touch with reality. Outside his window, the gleaming towers of New Geneva sparkled in the morning sun. It all looked so peaceful. The civilians down there had no idea how vulnerable they really were. The door chime interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," Wilson called. The door slid open to reveal Captain Thomas Reed, his former student, and one of the few officers who still treated him with genuine respect. Reed's uniform was crisp as always, but his face looked drawn with worry. "Admiral," Reed said, stepping inside and letting the door close behind him. "Sorry to disturb you, but I thought you should hear this directly from me." Wilson gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit down, Tom. What's happened?" Reed sat but perched on the edge of the seat. The Kraul have broken through the outer defense line at Proxima Centauri. All 3 station outposts have gone silent. The 4th Fleet engaged them, but was... He paused. "The 4th Fleet is gone, sir." Wilson's blood went cold. The entire fleet. Admiral Chen's flagship, too. All of it. The Kraul have developed some new weapon system. Based on the fragmentary data we received, they can somehow disrupt our shield harmonics from a distance we never thought possible. Our ships were defenseless. "How long?" Wilson asked, his mind already calculating distances and fleet movements. Intelligence gives us 3 weeks before their main force reaches Earth's solar system, maybe a month before they reach Earth itself. Wilson stood up and walked to his window. 3 weeks. The Earth Defense Council would be panicking right now, scrambling existing ships into defensive formations that would be just as vulnerable as the Fourth Fleet had been. The conventional response won't work, Wilson said quietly. We need something they haven't seen before, something they can't predict. Reed nodded. That's why I'm here, sir. I've always believed in your ideas, even when others didn't. If there was ever a time for an unconventional approach. Wilson turned back from the window, a new resolve hardening in his eyes. Tom, what I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Wilson entered a code into his desk terminal. The ordinary-looking wall behind him slid open to reveal a hidden room. He motioned for Reed to follow him inside. The small chamber contained a 3-dimensional holographic projector in the center. Wilson activated it, and a detailed schematic of a massive battleship appeared, rotating slowly in the air before them. Reed's eyes widened. Is that the Thunderchild? Wilson confirmed. Not just designs anymore, Tom. I've been building it. That's how. The Defense Council rejected the funding years ago. Wilson smiled grimly. I have friends in private industry who believe in being prepared. We've been constructing it in sections within an asteroid in the belt. The official records show it as a mining operation. Reed stared at the hologram in disbelief. The ship was unlike anything in Earth's fleet, angular where most ships were smooth, with strange protrusions and technology configurations that defied conventional engineering principles. But sir, even if you've managed to build the hull and infrastructure, what about the power core? Every engineer in the system said it was theoretically impossible. Wilson touched the terminal, and the hologram zoomed in to show the central core of the ship, a spherical chamber surrounded by concentric rings of unknown technology. That's where Dr. Anna Foster comes in, Wilson said. Have you heard of her? Reed shook his head. She was a theoretical physicist at Europa University until 3 years ago. Then she seemingly disappeared from academic circles. The truth is, she's been working with me. She developed a way to tap into what she calls dimensional bleed, drawing power from parallel dimensional spaces. Reed looked skeptical. That sounds like science fiction. Sir. So did splitting the atom, once, Wilson replied. 2 days ago, we successfully tested the core at 20% capacity. It generated more power than the entire North American power grid. Reed sat down heavily on a nearby stool. So the Thunderchild is real. It exists. It exists, but it's untested in combat. The weapons systems are installed but not fully calibrated. Some of the defensive systems are still theoretical. Wilson looked Reed directly in the eyes. But it's the only chance we have. The Crawl have never seen anything like it. Does the Defense Council know? Wilson shook his head. No. And they won't. Not until we present them with a fully operational battleship. They'd shut us down if they knew we'd gone this far on our own. Us? Reed asked. I need a crew, Tom. A small, trusted group who can think outside the box and are willing to take enormous risks. I need you to captain her. Reed stood up straighter. Me? But you're the one who designed her. You should. I'm too old to captain a ship in combat, Wilson interrupted. I'll be aboard as admiral. But I need you on the bridge. There's no one I trust more. Through the window behind them, sirens began to wail across the city. The public announcement was beginning. Earth was now officially at war. Wilson looked at the hologram of his impossible ship and then back at Reed. We launch in 48 hours. I need your answer now, Captain. Reed's face showed fear, uncertainty, and then determination. He stood straight and saluted. I'm with you, Admiral. When do we start assembling the crew? Wilson turned off the hologram, the massive shape of the Thunderchild vanishing into darkness. Now, he said. We start now. The command center of Earth Defense Headquarters buzzed with frantic activity. Officers rushed between stations, their faces pale with tension. On the main screen, red dots representing Krull warships moved steadily toward Earth's solar system, swallowing the blue dots of Earth's defensive fleet one by one. General Adams clenched his fist on the central table. "We've lost contact with the 7th Fleet at Saturn's orbit. The Krull broke through them like they weren't even there." The Defense Council members exchanged grim looks. Earth's most advanced ships, their best technology, their bravest crews, all falling before the Krull advance. The alien armada would reach Earth within days. "What about the experimental shield modifications?" asked one counselor. "Failed," Adams replied flatly. The Krull adapted within minutes. In the back of the room, Admiral Wilson stood silently watching the disaster unfold. He checked his watch. It was time. "General," Wilson said, stepping forward, "I request permission to deploy a new asset." Adams looked up with irritation. "What new asset? Every ship we have is already engaged." Wilson met his gaze steadily. "Not every ship." Captain Thomas Reed stood in the hidden dock carved within asteroid MX-117, staring up at the massive shape of the Thunderchild. Workers scurried around the dock, making final preparations. The ship loomed above them, dark, angular, and intimidating. "Beautiful, isn't she?" came a voice beside him. Reed turned to see Dr. Anna Foster, the physicist responsible for the ship's impossible power core. Her eyes reflected the dim blue glow from the ship's external lights. "Beautiful and terrifying," Reed admitted. "Will she actually work?" Foster smiled thinly. "The core is stable at 60% capacity. That's more than enough to power all primary systems. Beyond that," she shrugged, "we're in uncharted territory." A commotion at the dock entrance drew their attention. Admiral Wilson entered, followed by a group of about 20 people in various uniforms and civilian clothes. "Your crew," Foster said quietly. "Good luck, Captain." She walked away as Wilson approached with the group. "Captain Reed," Wilson said formally, "may I present your volunteer crew?" Reed looked over the small group, far too few to properly man a battleship of the Thunderchild's size, but quality would have to overcome quantity. Wilson began the introductions. Lieutenant Mark Davis, weapons specialist, former instructor at the Luna Academy until the Krull destroyed the colony where his family lived. A hard-faced man with close-cropped hair nodded curtly. Chief Engineer Olivia Grant. She helped design the cooling systems for the main reactor. A tall woman with calloused hands and intelligent eyes stepped forward. "Captain, the engine room is ready. But I must warn you, we've never tested the power systems under combat conditions." "None of this has been tested under combat conditions," Wilson replied grimly. "That's why we're all here." The introductions continued. Navigator Paul Jones, a civilian pilot with a reputation for flying routes others called suicide. Communications specialist Robert Turner, discharged from regular service for creative interpretation of protocols. Dr. Lisa Martinez, a military surgeon with experience treating plasma burns, and a dozen others, scientists, engineers, and soldiers, all volunteers, all knowing this mission might be a one-way trip. "This is everyone?" Reed asked when Wilson finished. "Everyone willing to gamble their lives on an impossible ship," Wilson confirmed. "We'll be severely understaffed. Most of you will pull double shifts and duties outside your specialties." No one complained. No one walked away. Wilson looked at his watch again. Earth Defense Command has just been informed of our existence. They're desperate enough not to ask too many questions. We launch in 30 minutes. The bridge of the Thunderchild hummed with nervous energy as the crew took their stations. Unlike the polished, ergonomic bridges of standard Earth vessels, this one was utilitarian and crowded with experimental interfaces. Reed settled into the captain's chair, feeling its unfamiliar contours. "Status report," he ordered. Navigator Jones swiveled from his station. "All moorings cleared. Asteroid dock doors opening now." Through the forward viewport, Reed watched as the massive stone doors slowly parted, revealing the star-filled blackness of space. Lieutenant Davis at Weapons shook his head in wonder. I still don't understand how half these systems are supposed to function. The targeting algorithms alone violate standard. Standard won't save Earth. Reed interrupted. Is Weapons Control responding? Davis checked his console. Yes, sir. All weapons systems show green, though I can't guarantee accuracy on the first volley. Engineer Grant, how's our power? Grant's voice came through the comm from the engine room. Core is stable at 40%, Captain. I can give you more if needed, but Dr. Foster recommends we stay below 60% until we're sure the containment fields hold under stress. Reed nodded. Understood. Communications. Any word from Earth Defense? Turner touched his earpiece. They've cleared us for immediate launch, sir. General Adams sends, and I quote, Godspeed, you crazy bastards. A hint of a smile touched Reed's lips. Navigation, take us out. 1/4 thrust until we clear the asteroid field. Aye, Captain. The Thunderchild dropped out of its acceleration run at the edge of the Jupiter defense zone, where once a proud fleet of Earth, the lead crawl vessels fired. Brilliant beams of destructive energy streaked across space toward the Thunderchild. The bridge crew tensed, bracing for impact. The beams struck the shimmering field and disappeared. The shield pulsed brighter for a moment, rippling with absorbed power. In engineering, Dr. Foster watched her monitors with scientific fascination. Power levels increasing by 12%. Core stability holding. The absorption field is working perfectly. On the bridge, Davis stared at his readings in disbelief. No damage. Shields at 100%. And strengthening. The crawl fired again, a more concentrated barrage. Again, the energy was absorbed, causing the shields to glow brighter. They're confused, Turner reported, monitoring the crawl communications. Their targeting systems show direct hits, but they can't explain why we're not damaged. Reed allowed himself a small smile. Let's show them what else this impossible ship can do. Lieutenant Davis, target their lead vessel with the phase disruptors. Davis's hands moved over his console, activating weapon systems unlike any Earth had deployed before. Target locked. But sir, they have shields too. Wilson nodded. The phase disruptors operate in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Their shields exist in normal space. Our weapons fire through spaces between. Firing, Davis announced. From the Thunderchild's angular hull, pulses of energy that seemed to bend light around them launched toward the lead crawl ship. When they reached the alien vessel, they simply passed through its shields as if they weren't there, striking the hull directly. The crawl ship shuddered, internal explosions visible through its viewport. Its power systems flickered and died. Silence fell on the Thunderchild's bridge, broken only by the beeping of sensors. Direct hit, Davis said, his voice barely above a whisper. Their shields didn't stop it at all. The crawl responded immediately, multiple ships firing simultaneously, while others began to maneuver to surround the Earth vessel. Evasive action, Reed ordered. Let's not get cocky. We still don't know this ship's limitations. The Thunderchild responded smoothly, its unconventional drive allowing maneuvers that would tear apart a normal ship. More crawl weapons fire was absorbed by the shields, and with each burst, the power readings increased. We're up to 70% power now, Grant reported from engineering, her voice tense. Dr. Foster says we're approaching untested levels. Reed glanced at Wilson. Recommendations, Admiral. Use the power while we have it. Hit them hard, then withdraw. Make them afraid. Reed nodded. Target 3 more vessels and fire at will, Lieutenant. Navigator, prepare an escape vector. The Thunderchild's weapons lashed out again, bypassing crawl defenses and causing devastating damage. 2 smaller vessels exploded outright, while a larger one listed in space, venting atmosphere. The crawl formation broke, their perfect coordination suddenly disrupted. Some vessels accelerated toward the Thunderchild, while others pulled back to regroup. They're adapting, Wilson warned. That's what makes them so dangerous. Reed watched the tactical display. All weapons, continuous fire. Navigator, take us through their formation at maximum speed, then execute the withdrawal plan. The Thunderchild surged forward, weapons blazing. It cut through the crawl formation like a knife, leaving damaged and destroyed ships in its wake. The absorption shields continued to drink in enemy fire, though Foster's warnings from engineering grew more urgent as power levels approached 80%. As they reached the other side of the crawl formation, Reed gave the order, "Execute withdrawal plan now." The Thunderchild's engines flared brilliantly, and the ship accelerated away at speeds no Earth vessel had achieved before. The remaining crawl ships attempted pursuit but quickly fell behind. On the bridge, the tension eased slightly as the distance between them and the crawl increased. "We did it," Davis said, disbelief in his voice. "We actually hit them and got away." Wilson's expression remained grave. "We surprised them. That advantage won't last. They'll analyze what happened and adapt their tactics." Reed nodded. "But we gained something even more valuable than a tactical victory." "What's that, Captain?" asked Navigator Jones. Reed looked at the data showing the crawl fleet reorganizing, their pursuit abandoned for now. "Time," he answered. "We've given Earth time. And just as importantly," he gestured to the screen where the crawl were clearly regrouping rather than continuing their advance. "For the first time since this war began, we've made the crawl afraid." The temporary command center on Mars Colony buzzed with a new energy. Officers moved with purpose rather than panic. On the main tactical display, the crawl fleet had slowed its advance toward Earth, regrouping after their unexpected encounter with the Thunderchild. General Adams studied the latest intelligence reports with a frown. "They're calling in reinforcements. Our scouts report at least 30 more warships joining their main fleet." Admiral Wilson nodded grimly. "They won't underestimate us again. And they're bringing their flagship." The room fell silent. Everyone had heard of the crawl flagship, World Eater, a massive vessel twice the size of anything humanity had ever built. It had never been defeated in battle. "Can your ship handle that?" Adams asked, skepticism clear in his voice despite the Thunderchild's initial success. Wilson met his gaze. "We're about to find out." In the Thunderchild's engine room, Dr. Foster and Chief Engineer Grant worked frantically to stabilize the experimental core. The battle against the crawl advance force had pushed the power systems beyond their tested limits. "The dimensional bleed is increasing," Foster said, pointing to fluctuating readings on her monitor. "The more energy we absorb, the more unstable the containment field becomes." Grant wiped sweat from her forehead. "Can we reinforce it?" "Not without materials we don't have." Foster's face was grim. "The core can handle one more major battle, maybe. After that." She left the sentence unfinished. They both knew what failure of the dimensional core would mean. An explosion that would tear a hole through space itself. On the bridge, Captain Reed studied the tactical projections. The crawl reinforcements had arrived, forming a new battle group centered around their flagship. The World Eater lived up to its name, a massive dark vessel that seemed to devour the light around it. "They're moving again," Navigator Jones reported. "Current course will bring them to Earth orbit in 18 hours. Reed nodded. "And us? Repairs are at 90% completion. We can intercept them near the Mars defense perimeter in 4 hours. Reed turned to Wilson. "What's our strategy, Admiral? We hurt them before, but their flagship changes everything." Wilson's face was carved with fatigue and worry. "We need to speak with Dr. Foster first." When Foster arrived on the bridge, her expression told them everything before she spoke. "The core is stable for now, but the absorption shield has changed its properties. Every time it absorbs energy, the dimensional bleed increases if we take too many hits in the next battle." How many is too many? Reed asked. Foster shook her head. Impossible to calculate precisely. But if the core reaches 95% capacity, containment will fail. Wilson leaned forward. And if we deliberately pushed it beyond containment? As a weapon? The bridge went silent. Foster's eyes widened slightly. The resulting dimensional rupture would destroy everything within several thousand kilometers, possibly much more, including the World Eater. Foster nodded slowly. Yes, but also the Thunderchild and everyone aboard. Reed exchanged a glance with Wilson. They were discussing a suicide mission. There's one more system we haven't tested yet, Wilson said after a moment. The tactical jump drive. Lieutenant Davis looked up from his weapons station. Jump drive. I thought we had conventional engines. The Thunderchild has both, Wilson explained. The jump drive is designed to move the ship instantaneously from one point in space to another without crossing the distance between. That's impossible. Yes, we know. Wilson's smile was thin. Dr. Foster's dimensional technology again. The drive creates a momentary tunnel between 2 points in spacetime. It's extremely experimental, Foster warned. We only managed 2 successful tests at very short ranges. The power requirements are enormous, and each jump increases core instability. Reed considered this new information. If it works, we could appear anywhere in the battle instantly, hit them before they can react, then jump away. Exactly, Wilson said. But we'd need to coordinate perfectly, each department working in absolute harmony. Reed looked around at his crew. These volunteers who had risked everything on an impossible ship. What do you think? Can we do this? One by one, they nodded. Then let's make a plan. 4 hours later, the Thunderchild waited in the shadow of Mars' moon Phobos. Before them, the massive crawl fleet approached in perfect formation, the World Eater at its center. They're scanning for us, Turner reported from communications, but our signature dampeners are working. They don't see us yet. Reed took a deep breath. All stations report. One by one, each section confirmed readiness. In engineering, Foster and Grant stood by the core controls, ready to channel power where needed. Remember, Reed said to his crew, quick strikes only. Hit and jump before they can concentrate fire on us. No heroics. Wilson stood beside Reed's chair. The moment they detect us, they'll try to lock us down with their suppression fields. Don't give them the chance. Reed nodded. Weapons hot. Jump drive ready. Let's begin. He leaned forward. Execute jump 1. The bridge lights dimmed momentarily as massive power flowed to the jump drive. Space seemed to bend around the ship, and suddenly they were somewhere else, directly behind a crawl cruiser. Fire, Reed ordered. The Thunderchild's weapons lashed out, tearing through the unprepared cruiser before it could raise shields. As alarms began to sound throughout the crawl fleet, Reed gave his next order. Jump 2. Again, the ship vanished, reappearing above the crawl formation. More weapons fire, more destruction. The crawl responded quickly, energy weapons stabbing upward, but the Thunderchild was already gone. Power at 78% and climbing. Foster reported after the third jump. Core temperature increasing. The Thunderchild appeared and disappeared across the battlefield like a ghost, striking and vanishing before the crawl could respond effectively. 6 enemy ships destroyed, then 8, then 12. But the World Eater remained untouched, protected by layers of smaller vessels. They're adapting, Davis warned after their 6th jump, starting to predict our appearance points. As if to emphasize his words, the Thunderchild materialized after jump 7 directly in the path of concentrated fire from 3 crawl cruisers. The absorption shields flared brilliantly as they drank in the energy. Power spike. Foster's voice was tight with alarm. 85% and rising quickly. Jump now. Reed ordered. The ship vanished again, but not before taking more hits. When they reappeared, Damage reports flooded in from multiple sections. Hull breach on Deck 4, Turner reported. Emergency containment holding. Reed wiped blood from a cut on his forehead where he'd struck the console during the attack. Status of the World Eater. It's changing course, Jones reported with sudden alarm. Breaking formation and accelerating toward Earth. They're making a run directly for Earth while their other ships engage us. Wilson grabbed the tactical console. They figured out our weakness. They know we can't be everywhere at once. Reed studied the tactical display. The World Eater was indeed pulling away, surrounded by a protective screen of escorts. Meanwhile, the remaining crawl vessels were spreading out, making it impossible for the Thunderchill to engage them all. Core at 88%, Foster reported. 2, maybe 3 more jumps before containment becomes critical. Reed looked at Wilson, the question unspoken between them. Wilson nodded slowly. We have no choice. Set course to intercept the World Eater. Sir, Davis said hesitantly, even with our weapons, the World Eater's defenses are too strong for a conventional attack. I know, Wilson replied quietly. That's why we're not making a conventional attack. Understanding dawned on the bridge crew's faces. This would be their final jump. Reed straightened in his chair. Prepare evacuation protocols for non-essential personnel. Engineer Grant, begin core destabilization procedures. As the orders were carried out, Reed looked at the image of the World Eater on the main screen. The massive vessel that had destroyed countless worlds was now heading toward Earth, carrying enough firepower to end human civilization. One ship against their flagship, Reed said softly, just like when we started. Wilson placed a hand on his shoulder. They said this battleship was impossible, Captain. Let's show them just how impossible we can be. Alarms blared throughout the Thunderchild as crew members rushed to evacuation stations. The ship limped through space, its hull scored with damage from multiple crawl attacks. In engineering, Dr. Foster watched grimly as the core's containment field fluctuated. The readout showed 91% power, dangerously close to the critical threshold. Final stabilization complete, she reported to the bridge. The core will hold for approximately 12 minutes once I remove the safety protocols. Understood. Captain Reed's voice replied over the comm. Begin evacuation of your section. Foster exchanged a glance with Chief Engineer Grant. You should go, she said quietly. Grant shook her head. Someone needs to monitor the core until the last moment. 2 sets of hands are better than 1. On the bridge, Reed watched the evacuation progress on his display. 3 escape shuttles had already launched, carrying most of the crew to relative safety. The remaining officers at their stations were those who had volunteered to stay until the final jump. The World Eater has entered Earth's defensive perimeter, Navigator Jones reported. Earth's remaining ships are engaging. But he left the sentence unfinished. Everyone knew Earth's conventional fleet stood no chance against the Crawl flagship. Admiral Wilson stood beside Reed's chair, his face set with determination. Distance to target. 20,000 kilometers in closing, Jones replied. We can make the jump anytime. Reed nodded. Lieutenant Davis, status of weapons. Phase disruptors are offline, Davis reported from tactical. Conventional weapons at 30%. Not that they'll matter much against the World Eater's shields. They don't need to, Wilson said. The core will do the real damage. Reed opened the shipwide channel. All remaining crew, this is Captain Reed. Final jump will commence in 2 minutes. Proceed to emergency stations immediately. He paused. It has been my honor to serve with each of you. He closed the channel and looked at Wilson. Admiral, you should take the last shuttle. Wilson shook his head. This ship was my dream, Tom. I'll see it through to the end. Reed didn't argue. Instead, he turned to the bridge crew. Davis, Turner, Jones, the shuttle bay. That's an order. The 3 officers hesitated, then saluted. As they filed off the bridge, Turner stopped at the door. Earth will know what you did here today, sir. Both of you. When they were gone, Reed and Wilson were alone on the bridge. Through the view screen, they could see the distant shape of Earth, blue and green and beautiful against the blackness of space. Closer, the massive form of the World Eater moved inexorably toward it, its escorts fending off the last desperate attacks from Earth's defenders. Core at 93%. Foster's voice reported from engineering. Safety protocols disengage. Ready for final jump on your command. Reed settled into the captain's chair one last time. Plot jump coordinates directly inside the World Eater's shield perimeter, as close to their core as possible. Coordinates set, Foster confirmed. Captain, it's been an honor working on this project. The honor was ours, Doctor, Wilson replied. Your impossible science is about to save Earth. Reed's hand hovered over the jump control. Initiate final jump in 3, 2, 1. He pressed the control, and the Thunderchild vanished from normal space. For a brief, disorienting moment, the ship existed in a dimensional corridor between points in spacetime. Then, with a violent shudder, it rematerialized, directly alongside the World Eater, inside the massive ship's defensive shields. Alarms screamed as proximity warnings activated. Through the view screen, they could see the dark hull of the Kral flagship filling their view, so close they could make out individual weapon emplacements and hull plates. Core at 96%. Foster's voice was tight with tension. Containment failing. Reed activated the engines, pushing the Thunderchild directly against the World Eater's hull. Foster, Grant, get to the emergency pods now. Too late for that, Captain, Grant replied calmly. We'll make sure the core does its job. On the Kral flagship, confusion reigned. Their sensors had not detected the Earth vessel until it was already inside their shields. Weapons that had been firing outward at Earth's defenders couldn't be brought to bear on the threat, now attached to their hull like a parasite. Reed looked at Wilson. I guess we really built an impossible ship after all. Wilson smiled sadly. Not impossible. Just ahead of its time. The core readout flashed red as it passed 98%. The ship shuddered as dimensional energy began to leak from containment. For Earth, Reed said quietly. For all of us, Wilson agreed. The core breach began as a small ripple in reality, a point where the barrier between dimensions grew thin and then tore. The Thunderchild's hull glowed with strange energies that defied the normal laws of physics. These energies spread quickly to the World Eater's hull, creating patterns of light that raced across the massive ship's surface. In the World Eater's command center, the Kral Supreme Commander watched in disbelief as reality itself seemed to bend around the human vessel. His technicians reported phenomena they couldn't explain. Space folding in on itself, energy readings beyond their instruments' capacity to measure. For one brief moment, both ships existed partially in normal space and partially in the dimensional void that Dr. Foster's technology had tapped into. Then, with a silent flash that somehow echoed across space, both vessels vanished. Where the World Eater and the Thunderchild had been, a strange dimensional rift pulsed briefly before collapsing in on itself. A shockwave of exotic particles spread outward, washing harmlessly over Earth's remaining ships. 3 months later, in a solemn ceremony at Earth Defense Headquarters, the surviving crew of the Thunderchild stood at attention as General Adams unveiled a memorial plaque. In honor of Admiral James Wilson, Captain Thomas Reed, Dr. Anna Foster, Chief Engineer Olivia Grant, and all those who gave their lives aboard the Thunderchild, he read. They proved the impossible was possible, and in doing so, they saved humanity. The gathered crowd included government officials, military personnel, and civilians, all united in gratitude for the sacrifice made by the Thunderchild's crew. After the ceremony, in a secure laboratory deep beneath the headquarters, scientists worked quietly around a strange device. It was a replica of Dr. Foster's dimensional core, built from the data transmitted by the Thunderchild before its final mission. The dimensional principles are sound, one scientist explained to General Adams. Foster's work has opened up possibilities we never imagined before. Faster than light travel, unlimited energy, perhaps even communications across vast distances. Adams nodded. And our defenses. Every ship in the fleet is being retrofitted with absorption shield technology. The crawl will never catch us unprepared again. Across the Earth and its colonies, humanity began to rebuild. The story of the impossible battleship spread, inspiring a new generation of scientists and explorers to push beyond the boundaries of what was thought possible. In distant reaches of space, the remnants of the Kral fleet retreated to their home systems. Their reports spoke of human technology that defied understanding, of one ship that had destroyed their greatest weapon. For the first time in their history of conquest, the Kral feared another species. Nothing was the same. And somewhere, in a dimension adjacent to normal space, something impossible happened. A small pocket of stability formed within the chaos of the dimensional void. Within this pocket, damaged but intact, the forward section of the Thunderchild drifted. On what remained of the bridge, emergency lights cast a dim glow over two figures. Admiral Wilson stirred, pulling himself painfully from the wreckage of his chair. Nearby, Captain Reed lay unconscious but breathing. Wilson looked out through the cracked view screen. Instead of stars, strange energies swirled in patterns no human had ever seen before. "Well," he said softly to himself, "I guess we'll need to build another impossible ship. This time, to get us home." He reached for the emergency beacon and activated it, sending its signal not through normal space, but through the dimensional corridors that Dr. Foster had discovered. A signal that perhaps someday someone would detect and understand. The impossible journey was just beginning.